For the longest time, people keep asking me about my TBRs and specifically getting through them. They are in awe that I'm able to get through them, and most of the time they come back to me and say, "But Mr. Francy, how do you get through your TBRs?" Today, I'm going to give you the tips of the trade. Are you someone who wants to make sure you get through the books that you are reading for every month? Well, today's top 10 tips should definitely help you. And that's what we're going to do. I'm going to attempt to help you to get through your monthly TBR. But first, a couple of quick notes. On a personal level, do I think that you need to get through your entire TBR every single month? No, I don't. This is more a video for those of you who want to get through your TBRs, or you're just sick of not getting through them every month and you want to have one month where you do. My second note is these tips may not work if you are a mood reader unless they are modified slightly here or there. So please do keep that in mind. My tips are generally for the reader that is not a mood reader, but if you are one, it could still work. Just a little bit of modifying needing to take place. Alright, that's enough from me. Let's jump right into the tips to help you get through your monthly TBR. Tip number 1, plan your books in advance. There is nothing worse than being days away from a new month and having no idea what it is that you want to read. The easy way to eliminate all of this stress is to pick out the books you want to read ahead of time. So for me personally, I like to select the books that I'm going to read months in advance. If I am specifically trying to set up a TBR, then I want to select the books that I'm going to put onto that TBR 2 months in advance. This has held true for a long time and is still true to this day. We are currently in October. I know what I'm planning to read in November, December, and yes, even January. Because if I keep myself 2 months ahead of schedule, then I don't have that stress of last minute moments going, oh my gosh, what am I going to read? I still don't have a TBR planned. So I have it ready to go in advance. Tip number 2. Purchase or reserve, if you're going through a library, your physical books as soon as possible. Worse than not knowing what books you're going to read that month is waiting around, being days away from the month beginning and still not having those books that you already planned to read anyway. Now, some of you are e-readers and that's absolutely fine. Maybe your e-reading books are already going to be available. But for those of you who want the physical book, if you're like me, and you're a couple of days away from that month, you are stressing because you plan on reading The Final Empire as your first book for the following month. We're 2 days away and it's still not here. The stress is real. The best way to deal with this type of stress is again to order in advance. This also works really well if you're ordering books like I am from another country. I am someone who lives in Australia, and as a reader in Australia, most of the books I know that we have here in Australia are the UK editions. I much prefer, as you can tell, the US editions of books. So I'm ordering most of the time my books from America. Ordering these books months in advance definitely helps me because it assures me that those books will get there, whether there is a standard delay or even, yes, as I'm experiencing right now, a lockdown delay. I think it's the best thing you can do. Order or order your books, or if you're going through a library route, put them on reserve as soon as you possibly can in order to ensure they will be there by the time the new month starts. Tip number 3. Only put the amount of books onto your TBR that you feel comfortable reading. There are a number of people out there who say that YouTubers, booktubers specifically, are putting pressure on everyone to read a ton of books per month. Can someone show me those videos? Because I haven't come across them yet. The only person that should be putting pressure on themselves when it comes to the amount of books they want to read per month is you. So don't go ahead and put 12 to 15 or 20 books on your TBR if that's not what you want to do. I put 12 books onto my TBR because that's what I want to do. It generally works out for me. I generally get through all 12 books, but I wouldn't put 12 books on my TBR for the sake of pressure of other booktubers. If I wanted to one month, I will put 5 or 6. 12 is the number I want. But what makes you comfortable? What are the amount of books that you feel you could tangibly actually get through? And make that your TBR. There is nothing wrong with 1 book, 2 books, 3 books, 4 books on your monthly TBR at all. All TBR stands for is to be read. Only put the amount of books onto your monthly TBR that you feel comfortable with getting through. Tip number 4, schedule in advance and schedule your reading. So what do I mean by this? A lot of people wonder how it is I get through my TBR, and the answer is I schedule. The answer is I do a lot in advance, but the biggest part of the answer is my scheduling. Tip number 4, schedule your reading, refers to schedule out the order of the books on your TBR and how you want to get through them. So, which book do you want to read first? Which book do you want to read second? Which book do you want to read third? Tip number 5, advanced scheduling mathematics. And this is a big one. So be ready for it. Grab out your notepads and pens because this one is a little bit more intricately detailed. Once you know the order of the books that you are going to read, go through each book in turn and add up the total amount of pages for each book. Okay, so Elantris has 652 pages. Twilight is 434. This one is 527. And this one is 485. Once you know the total of each of your books that you're going to read, add those totals together. That total is the total amount of pages that you intend to get through during the course of that month. Now, here comes the tricky part. With that total that you now have of the pages that you're going to read that month, divide that total with the total number of days that you plan to read that month. Do you plan to read every day and not take a day off? Great. Then you're going to be dividing that by 30 or 31 as the case may be. Are you planning to read every weekday? Then count up the total number of weekdays that there are in that month and divide by that. Only planning on reading weekends? That's fine too. Count up the total number of weekend days there are and divide by that. The answer that you are going to get is going to be your new PPD, which stands for pages per day, and we're going to revisit that in just a moment. Tip number 6, write out your schedule. So I have 2 ways that I go about doing this. I have one method, which is I have a Microsoft Word document where I basically create a table that is a mock-up calendar of the entire month. I also have random pieces of paper that I use a pen with and write down my schedule for the week. So I have my monthly schedule in Microsoft Word, and I have my weekly schedule on my piece of paper. Why? Because I'm a visual person. I like to see my goals in front of me. And the second reason is I like to scratch off those goals when they're completed, because there is nothing half as satisfying as getting through my reading day and saying, I'm done! Yay! I got there! I did it! I achieved it. So, how do you go about doing this? With the PPD that you have, pages per day, start slotting in order the PPD next to the books you're reading in the order you're reading them throughout the month. For example, for the first of, our next month is November, for the 1st of November I would have, and let's say my PPD is 110. I would have Warbreaker 110p. Then for the second, it will be Warbreaker 220p. For my third day, Warbreaker 330p. And so on and so forth. And then that becomes your goal every single day. It goes from a monthly goal with a monthly TBR to really zoning in and looking at it as a daily goal. Okay, on the 1st of November, I need to read 110 pages of Warbreaker. Now, some people are going to come back to me and say, but Mr. Francy, sometimes this isn't always going to work out, because what if I need to read 100 pages every day, because that's my PPD, and I have 70 pages left of a book? Fine, that's absolutely fine, but here is what I recommend you do. Right on that particular date, finish Warbreaker. Let's say that there's 70 pages left. Finish Warbreaker, and Into the Drowning Deep 30p. So still take in your 100 pages, just finish this, and then what you have left, you move over and transfer that to the next book. So then you've read 30 pages of this book on the day you completed this book, and then when you go into the next day of this book, you then go to 130 pages to read rather than just 100 pages because you've already read 30. If you've done your advanced scheduling mathematics correctly, you will find that the books with your PPD take you through every single day that you plan to read for that entire month. Tip number 7, pick a time of day that works for you, not the time of day that works for everyone else. Some people like to read during the day. Some people can't read during the day because they work. Some people like to read at night. Some like to read early in the morning when they're first woken up. It's up to what works for you. Don't try to fit your schedule around what everyone else is doing. Say your best friend who's also a booktuber likes to read at 2 o'clock in the morning, but that doesn't work for you. You prefer to read at 9 a.m. in the morning. That is absolutely fine, but work out what works for you. It'll be trial and error to begin with, but once you work out what works for you, stick to your schedule. The schedule you've determined when your reading hour, or hours as the case may be, will be. Speaking of sticking to it, tip number 8 is stick to your schedule. So let's just say that you are planning to read between the hours of 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. every day, and you plan to read 100 pages. You are now at 6:10 p.m. and you've only read 75 pages. What do you do? My answer to that is, where possible, keep reading. You said you would read 100 pages, so keep going. Now, if this is not possible for whatever reason, you need to put on the dinner for the day, or you need to go out and run errands, or there's a family emergency. Obviously, that's different. But what I'm saying is, if you were then going to go and watch TV, or then going to go and play a video game, honey, those video games will still be there waiting for you when you are done. So push through, because it always feels more satisfying reaching that goal that day. Let's talk about what might happen if you don't reach that goal that day. Tip number 9, have in advance a day off rule. Now, what do I mean by this? Do I mean it's time to implement a rule where you take a day off? Not at all. If anything, I would rather have people read every day or read as many days as they can. But what I'm getting you to do here with tip number 9 is to have a contingency plan. What happens if for whatever reason one of your scheduled reading days you can't read? There are many reasons why this might happen. We've spoken about some of them already. You need to take your kids to school. There is a family emergency. You're at work a lot longer than you thought you would be. Grandma's come around with those baked cookies you love, or those dreaded unannounced visitors that arrive the moment you start reading your book. Oh my. Hi! The key to success here when it comes to achieving your monthly TBR is, as we've been saying this whole time, say it with me everyone, plan in advance. That's right, because the more you plan for in advance, the less likely you're going to come into a sticky situation, a slippery slope situation, or a situation where you are caught off guard. So have that contingency plan. What happens if you miss a day of reading? I miss a day of reading, I will do this. So what I do, and this is simple in theory, but much harder to execute, which is if I miss a day, then I tack on the day that I missed reading to the next day and include that. I'm effectively double reading the following day in order to catch up. For those of you who don't read on weekends, who read on weekdays, maybe you could implement a goal that as a contingency, if you miss a day of reading, then that week on Saturday, you are going to read in order to catch up. It's a catch-up day. If you don't miss any days during the week, you're fine. You get the weekend off. But if you do, you have that Saturday there to catch up. Find what works for you as a contingency plan, because if you miss a day, those days start adding up. So this works not only if you miss a day, but if you miss certain pages. If you're planning to read 100 pages, and like we said with the last tip, you read 70 the day before. So there's still 30 pages that you are behind. What are you going to do with that contingency when you miss a certain amount of pages you were meant to read that day? Have a contingency plan ready to go so that when it happens, in that moment when you've realized you've missed that day, you can say, you know what? I don't have to stress about this because I have that contingency plan. So I'll just put that contingency plan in place and I'll be fine. And finally, tip number 10 is engage in workarounds. There is a wonderful thing that has been developed, and I am so proud to introduce you to it. It is called audiobooks. If for whatever reason you cannot physically pick up a book and read it, audiobooks are the way to go. You are literally consuming the same story, it's just then rather than you reading it, you're having someone else read it to you. Now, why are audiobooks beneficial? For so many reasons. Where do I begin? Imagine that you have fallen ill and you are in bed for most of the day. You want to read, but the idea of picking up a book, oh my gosh, it's the last thing you want to do. I mean, you're already aching and in pain all over. Why would you want to pick up a book? You don't have to. Put on the audiobook. I mean, you're planning on watching TV or listening to music anyway, right? If you are, why not just substitute that? Turn off the TV, put on the audiobook, you're still consuming your book and you're still getting through your day's read. I know I'm being cheeky there, but you can't say I'm wrong. That is still an option. But anything that you might be doing, you can listen to the audiobook alongside that. I understand. Life is hard. What about the commuting travel? If you're traveling alone in your car, put on the audiobook and blare it out loud as you would have your lovely pop tunes. What if you're traveling or commuting by public transport? Earbuds are a great thing to invest in. Pop in those earbuds into your phone or device and listen to the audiobook that way. That way you are still consuming your book while doing things at the same time. It kind of is the reading experience that works with you rather than against you. But that is it. That is my top 10 tips for how you can get through your monthly TBR. Do you have any other tips you'd like to add to this video? Please add them in the comments section below and let's start a dialogue. As I said earlier on in this video, this may not work for mood readers without some alterations being made here or there. So if you have tips for mood readers to assist them to get through their TBR, let me know that as well in the comment section below. But I hope that this helps you. If you end up putting these tips into action, let me know the results that you get. I hope that they work for you as effectively as they've worked for me. But in the meantime, that is where I am going to leave it, letting you guys go with peace, blessings, and so much love. I post videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I'll see you again soon. Mwah! Thank you so much for watching. Be kind and love one another, and happy reading!